His first love has 5 men and their wives are coming. My husband's first love, Chloe Bennett, was sitting in my living room, pregnant and demanding I sign the divorce papers to make way for her. She told me that Ethan only married me because I could pay off his family's massive debts and serve as a free housekeeper. In a fit of rage, I grabbed a kitchen knife and chased her all the way out of my house. But the moment the door slammed shut, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello, I'm Chloe's husband." I sneered. "What? Did you just find out my husband is sleeping with your wife?" The man on the other end was silent for 2 seconds. "Ethan is just one of them. He told me Chloe wasn't just stringing my husband along. She was actively dating 4 other men at the same time. And their wives had already found out. They were on their way to meet me right now." At that moment, I was completely frozen. It turned out the sweetheart Ethan had obsessed over for 10 years had never belonged to him alone. "Clara, you didn't actually think Ethan married you because he loved you, did you?" I stood at the doorway, clutching the groceries I'd just bought, my knuckles turning white. The woman speaking was sitting on my sofa, acting like she owned the place. She wore a loose white designer dress, her legs crossed elegantly. Her stomach was slightly rounded. She held an ultrasound photo in her hand, looking me up and down with pure disdain. Her eyes made me feel like a piece of cheap, worn-out furniture. My hair was a messy bun, I had zero makeup on, and I had just rushed back from work, stopping by the supermarket on the way. Meanwhile, she was dripping in luxury brands, her manicure flawless. She looked at me and smirked. "What? Don't recognize me?" She tossed the ultrasound photo onto the coffee table with a casual flick of her wrist. Figures. Ethan probably didn't mention me much. After all, once he married you, he had to play the part of the good husband. I set the groceries down and said nothing. My silence only made her more confident. "I'm Chloe, Ethan's first love, and the only woman he's ever truly cared about." She gently caressed her belly. "We were supposed to get married years ago. If his dad hadn't gotten cancer and his family hadn't gone bankrupt, our kid would be in preschool by now." My ears buzzed. My chest felt like it was being squeezed by a cold hand. Over the years, Ethan had talked about Chloe more times than I could count. I had even forced myself to speak in a softer, gentler tone because he always complained that I wasn't as sweet as Chloe. I always thought it was just a harmless case of the one that got away. I thought if I worked hard, supported his family, and kept this home together, he would eventually see my worth. Only now did I realize that the thorn in Ethan's heart had never been pulled out. Seeing that I was speechless, Chloe's smile widened. She leaned back, crossing her legs, her eyes scanning my face, my waist, and my worn-out hands. "Look at you. You've gained weight, you look exhausted, and you don't even dress up. Ethan married you for one reason. He needed a cash cow to pay off his family's medical debts and take care of his sick parents." She let out a soft, mocking giggle. "He couldn't bear to see me suffer through that. But his family needed a free maid, didn't they? And you fit the bill perfectly." My fists clenched tighter. "Now that I'm back, and we have a baby on the way, it's time for you to step aside. The house and the car belong to Ethan. But you can take your kid with you. We don't want him." "Don't worry, I'll tell Ethan to throw a little cash your way so you don't end up on the streets." The house, the car, the child. She claimed it was about old love, but her eyes were fixed entirely on the assets. Suddenly I laughed. She blinked, startled. "What's so funny?" I walked over, grabbed her by the wrist, and yanked her off the sofa. She shrieked. "Clara, what the hell do you think you're doing?" "What am I doing?" I dragged her toward the door. "I'm throwing trash out of my house." She clearly didn't expect me to get physical. Clara Miller. My spot in this house was always meant to be mine. I marched into the kitchen, grabbed a heavy carving knife, and pointed it right at her face. "Get the fuck out." The moment she saw the blade, her face drained of color. "You'll pay for this. Ethan won't let you get away with this." I shoved her out into the hallway and slammed the door shut with a loud bang. The moment I set the knife down, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Who is this?" I demanded. There was a 2-second pause. "Hello, I'm Chloe's husband." I froze. Then, a cold laugh escaped my throat. "What? Did you just realize your wife is sleeping with my husband?" Another pause from the other side. "Ah, your husband is just her 5th guy." "Chloe didn't just lie to your husband. She has multiple men. Ethan is just one of them." I stood in the middle of my living room, clutching the phone, unable to process what I was hearing. "Say that again?" The man on the phone sounded incredibly calm, like someone who had already been broken by this absurdity. "Chloe is juggling several guys. For example, there's her high school ex, Steven. Then there's her college ex, Jason. Your husband, Ethan, is just another side piece she reeled back in." I almost laughed at the sheer ridiculousness of it. "Wait," I said, a bitter chuckle escaping my lips. "She just barged into my house with a pregnant belly demanding a divorce. And my husband is just one of her side pieces?" The man paused again. "It's crazy that you can still joke right now, but yeah, that's pretty much it." A wave of pure, White-hot rage rushed from my chest straight to my throat. For Ethan, I had endured years of misery. His father had cancer, his family was buried under debt, and they had nothing. I worked my day job, and at night, I did grueling mukbang live streams on TikTok to make extra money. I paid off his family's debts, covered his parents' medical bills, paid for our kids' school, and kept up the appearance of a comfortable life for him. And in the end, to Chloe, he was just some cheap side piece. It was disgusting. My name is Marcus Vance, the man said after a moment. I'm Chloe's legal husband. She ran away from home, and I've been tracking her. I only found out she was at your place through her phone's GPS. I sneered. Oh, she was here all right. Telling me to pack my bags and take my kid, promising to show me mercy with a little pity money. Marcus let out a dry, humorless laugh. That's her playbook. First, she acts deeply in love. Then she plays the victim, and finally, she claims she's pregnant. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? She always uses the excuse of I had a miscarriage for you in the past, and my body has never recovered, to guilt-trip men into giving her money, Marcus explained. No wonder. No wonder Ethan had been obsessed with her for 10 years. Every time he mentioned Chloe, his eyes were filled with guilt and regret. Why are you telling me all this? What do you want? I asked. Marcus was blunt. I want to ruin her. She didn't just run to your husband this time. Steven's wife is already driving to your city. Jason's wife is furious, and I'm trying to keep her from doing something reckless. I was completely blown away. So, what do you need me to do? I asked. Keep her close, Marcus said. Don't let her run. The moment she realizes something is off, she'll vanish into thin air. I didn't answer immediately. For 10 years, I had poured my soul into Ethan. I tolerated his coldness, thinking he just had a hard life, and kept loving him anyway. I was so incredibly blind. Fine, I said, my voice turning icy. I'll set up a meeting with her. After hanging up, I didn't sit down to cry. Instead, I went straight to the safe. I pulled out the deed to the house, my bank statements, and all our financial documents, lining them up neatly on the dining table. Before, I guarded these to keep our family together. Now I guarded them so they couldn't steal a single dime from me. As I organized the papers, I dialed Chloe's number. Her voice was as sickeningly sweet as ever. Clara? Have you finally come to your senses? I curled my lip. Let's meet up. She giggled, sounding like she had been expecting this. Of course. We women really should have a heart-to-heart. The next morning, before Ethan could grab his car keys from the counter, I snatched them first. He stopped, glaring at me with a deep frown. Clara, what are you doing? I'm driving today, I said calmly, slipping the keys into my pocket. Take an Uber or ride the bus. Ethan looked at me like I had lost my mind. What kind of crazy phase are you going through now? I didn't reply. I unlocked my phone, opened my banking app, and canceled his access to my credit cards right in front of his face. I left him with nothing but his own basic debit card. Then, I changed the auto-pay settings for our apartment rent, utilities, and parking fees back to my personal account. Ethan's face darkened instantly. Clara Miller, is this really necessary? I looked up at him. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't back down. Yes, it is. When you cheated on me, did you think about what was necessary? A flash of panic crossed his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by anger. We aren't even divorced yet, and you're already hiding money? Isn't this a bit pathetic? I almost laughed out loud. Pathetic. I stared straight into his eyes. Ethan, you let Chloe waltz into my home pregnant, telling me to get out. How is that not the pathetic thing here? His lips parted as if he wanted to defend himself. But I was already done listening. The door is right there, I said, stepping aside. From now on, don't touch anything that belongs to me. He stared at me for a few tense seconds, then slammed the door on his way out. When the door banged shut, I felt absolutely nothing. In the past, whenever we argued, I was always the first to apologize. I always excused his behavior because his father was sick, his family was broke, and I thought a man carrying that much stress was bound to have a bad temper. But now I realized he didn't have a hard time showing love. He just chose not to show it to me. I took the keys and started packing his clothes into cardboard boxes. As I threw his things in, memories of my own stupidity flooded back. Chloe spoke with a soft, high-pitched baby voice, and Ethan loved it. He used to tell me I sounded too harsh, that I lacked femininity. So like an idiot, I actually tried to mimic her. I forced my voice higher, trying to please him. Back then, I thought he just didn't know how to love. Now I knew he knew exactly how to love. He just saved it all for Chloe. When Ethan came home that evening and saw the boxes packed by the door, he froze. What is the meaning of this? He turned to me, his voice cold. Can't you read the room? I didn't even look up from the ledger I was updating at the table. People getting a divorce don't sleep in the same bed. He marched over, suppressing his rage. Do you really have to make a scene out of this? I finally looked up, my eyes dead. The fact that I haven't slapped you across the face yet is the absolute limit of my patience. His breath hitched, and the calm facade on his face finally cracked. Ethan retreated into the guest bedroom and didn't come out for the rest of the night. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. I ordered an iced Americano, sat in a private booth by the window, and placed my phone face down on the table. While waiting, I rehearsed exactly what I wanted to say. By 8 a.m., she hadn't shown up. I called her. Voicemail. Frowning, I called Ethan. First call went unanswered. Second call went straight to voicemail. I stared at the dark screen, a terrible feeling creeping up my spine. Did they run away together? I rushed home from the cafe. Just as I reached my building, my phone rang. It was the hospital. Mrs. Miller? Arthur Miller's condition has taken a turn for the worse. We need a family member to come down and sign some paperwork immediately. My feet glued to the ground. Call his son, Ethan. The nurse paused, her tone turning awkward. We tried. His phone is turned off. Standing in the cold night wind, I wanted to scream with laughter. Ethan had vanished with his mistress, completely abandoning his dying father at the hospital for me to deal with. When I arrived at the ward, Arthur's face was gray, oxygen tubes up his nose, gasping for breath. The nurse handed me the consent forms, bills, and admission papers. I signed them one by one, paying the fees, but my heart was turning to stone. Before, I thought I was doing my duty as a family member. Now I saw the truth. Ethan had just married me to have a free caregiver for his parents. I had taken care of his mother until she passed, took his dad to every chemo appointment, paid off their debts, and kept their dignity intact. And what did he do? The moment he had a chance, he wanted to run off with his first love, stepping all over me to build his new life. I took photos of the receipts, the admission notice, and the doctor's update, and threw them right into the Miller family group chat on WhatsApp. Arthur is in critical condition tonight. Does anyone know where Ethan is? Tell him to call me back immediately. The chat instantly exploded. Ethan's Aunt Sarah was the first to text. Where is he? I texted him earlier asking for money because my grandson is starting college, and he hasn't replied. Another relative chimed in. He promised to buy me a new TV this week too. Still no word. Should we call the police? Ethan's brother Liam called me directly, offering the same old excuses. Clara, please just take care of things at the hospital first. Ethan must be busy with something urgent. I cut him off. What could possibly be more urgent than his father dying? I hung up, exhausted. I didn't sleep at all that night. Not because I was grieving for Arthur, but because I suddenly realized that every ounce of misery in my life had been handed to me by Ethan the moment I signed our marriage license. But why should I keep suffering? As dawn broke, I went home to change. The moment I stepped inside, the doorbell rang. I thought it was Ethan, but when I opened the door, Marcus Vance was standing there. He looked like he hadn't slept either, dark circles under his eyes, holding a thick brown paper bag. Do you have a minute to talk? He asked. I stepped aside to let him in. Marcus didn't waste any time. He sat down and started laying out documents from the bag onto the coffee table. Chloe is only after money, he started. I stared at him. She told me she and Ethan are in love. Marcus let out a sharp, mocking laugh. She attaches herself to whoever she can extract money from. High school nostalgia, tears playing victim pregnancy. They're all just chips in her game. Marcus pushed an old medical document toward me. Take a look at this. It was an old ultrasound report. She's been using the exact same ultrasound photo to scam multiple men. My fingers trembled. The child Ethan had been grieving for 10 years. The miscarriage Chloe claimed was his, might not have even been his. Marcus looked up at me, his face expressionless. A woman like her doesn't know how to tell the truth. You need to check your bank accounts and gather evidence right now. Without a word, I went to the drawer where Ethan kept his spare bank statements. I began checking the transaction histories, transfers, and payrolls line by line. The further down I scrolled, the colder my blood ran. The most recent transfer, $30,000. The recipient's account was unknown, but the memo read, "It's not much, but keep it for now." Taking a deep breath, I felt like a knife was twisting in my chest. Then I looked at Marcus and smiled. Let them be together then. Marcus froze, his brows furrowing. What do you mean? Call Stephen and Jason's wives, I said calmly. We need to have a chat. Within 3 hours, my living room looked like a war room. The air smelled of black coffee, stale rain, and the faint, sharp metallic tang of boiling rage. Marcus sat at the corner of the dining table, his laptop open, pulling up cloud drives full of forensic bank audits, travel itineraries, and encrypted chat backups. Across from him sat 3 women. To my left was Victoria Vance, no relation to Marcus, though she ironically shared the surname through marriage to Stephen Vance, Chloe's high school sweetheart. Victoria was an estate lawyer in her late 30s, dressed in a sharp charcoal blazer, her dark hair pinned back with clinical precision. Her jaw had been clenched so tight for the last hour that the tendons in her neck stood out like wires. Beside her sat Elena Rossi, a pediatric surgeon and the wife of Jason Rossi. Chloe's college ex Elena had arrived directly from the hospital, still wearing her scrubs beneath a heavy trench coat, her eyes red-rimmed but dry, possessing the terrifying, cold stillness of someone who spent her days cutting through human tissue with a scalpel. And at the end of the sofa sat Rachel Hayes. Rachel was barely 25, married to Richard Hayes, a wealthy real estate developer twice her age, who had been bankrolling Chloe's luxury boutique in the fashion district under the guise of an angel investment. Rachel was holding a plush teddy bear belonging to her toddler, her knuckles stark white against the fabric. "So," Victoria said, breaking the silence with a voice like shattering ice, "let me make sure I have the timeline correct." She slapped 3 printed ultrasound scans onto my glass coffee table. Beside them, I placed the ultrasound Chloe had tossed onto my sofa yesterday morning. Marcus leaned forward, pointing a pen at the bottom right margin of each printout. "Look at the serial number of the GE Voluson machine. Look at the gestational sac diameté, 2.3 cm. Look at the crown rump length, 11 millimeters. Every single one of these prints was generated by the same private fertility clinic in Miami 2 years ago. The metadata on the digital files prove she had a graphic designer alter the patient name and the timestamp." Elena picked up the photos, examining them under the floor lamp. A bitter, jagged laugh tore from her throat. "She told Jason she was 6 weeks along with his miracle baby," Elena said, her fingers digging into the paper until it creaked. "Jason cried on our kitchen floor last Tuesday. He told me that after 7 years of our marriage being childless due to my residency stress, God had given him a sign. He took $400,000 out of our joint retirement fund to put a down payment on a luxury townhouse for her. Stephen gave her $50,000 last week," Victoria said calmly, though her pen snapped cleanly in half beneath her fingers. "He told me it was a bridging loan for his brother's logistics firm. I managed the firm's corporate books. His brother had no idea what I was talking about. When I audited Stephen's personal accounts, I found wire transfers to a luxury apartment leasing office in the downtown district dating back 8 months. And Richard," Rachel whispered, her lower lip trembling before she bit down hard enough to draw blood. "Richard bought her a Porsche Cayenne last month. He told me it was a company promotional vehicle. When I found the title, it was registered in Chloe Bennett's name. He told me she was the only woman who ever understood his soul." I looked at the 4 photos spread across the table. Then I pulled out Ethan's bank statements. "Ethan transferred $30,000 out of our savings 2 days ago," I said, my voice steady, devoid of the tears I had wasted on him for 10 years. "And 30 minutes before he left with her, his father went into cardiac arrest at St. Jude's. The hospital called his phone. It was off. He abandoned his dying father in an ICU so he could play the white knight for a woman who was taking checks from 4 other men at the exact same time." Marcus closed his laptop with a heavy, definitive thud. "Chloe's strategy relies entirely on isolation," Marcus said, looking at each of us in turn. "She convinces each man that he is her true love, that the other relationships in his life are shackles holding him back, and that this baby is his one chance at redemption. She isolates them from their wives, drains their liquidity, and the moment a man runs out of cash or his wife starts investigating, Chloe stages a tragic miscarriage caused by stress, takes the lump sum settlement, and vanishes to the next city." "Not this time," Victoria said, leaning over the table, her eyes burning with lethal intent. "She's not vanishing anywhere." "What do we do?" Rachel asked, looking at me. I looked at the house deed, the hospital consent forms, and the bank ledger. For 10 years, I had been the silent mule carrying the weight of the Miller family's poverty, Ethan's guilt, and Chloe's phantom shadow. I had worked through fevers, choked down insults, and swallowed my dignity until there was nothing left of me but bone and gristle. "We don't just divorce them," I said, meeting the gaze of every woman in that room. "We strip them down to the copper wiring. We take the money, we take the houses, we take their reputations, and we leave Chloe with 5 penniless, broken men who have nothing left to give her." Victoria's lips curled into a razor-sharp smirk. "Now you're talking like a lawyer, Clara." "I have the leases," Marcus added, pulling out a set of keys. "I know where they are." Ethan rented a secluded lakefront villa in the Northern Hills for the weekend. He thinks he's hiding his pregnant princess from the big, bad world. "Let's go pay them a visit," Elena said, standing up and pulling her trench coat tight. "It's time for a family reunion." The rain was pouring down in sheets when our 4-car convoy pulled up to the private access road of the Whispering Pines estate, 40 miles outside the city. The villa was modern, made of floor-to-ceiling glass, cedar beams, and warm yellow lighting that spilled out onto the manicured pine lawn. Through the massive front window, the The scene looked like a television commercial for domestic bliss. Ethan was standing in the open-concept kitchen, wearing an apron over a cashmere sweater, a sweater I had bought him for his birthday 2 years ago. He was carefully stirring a pot of organic soup, his posture attentive, gentle, radiating a domestic tenderness I had not seen from him in a decade. At the kitchen island sat Chloe, wrapped in a plush cream-colored cardigan, sipping warm milk from a porcelain mug. She was laughing, her hand resting gently on her slightly rounded belly, tapping on her phone beneath the counter. "Look at him," I murmured from the passenger seat of Victoria's sedan. "He never even boiled water for me when I had pneumonia." "Look at her hands," Victoria pointed through her telephoto camera lens. "She's texting Marcus, ping her cellular tower data." From the back seat, Marcus tapped on his phone. Within 5 seconds, his screen lit up with live cellular packet interceptions. "She's texting Steven," Marcus chuckled darkly. "Listen to this. Babe, the doctor says the baby needs specialized prenatal injections that cost $8,000. My card is blocked because my ex-husband is freezing my accounts. Can you wire it to my PayPal before noon? I'm so scared for our little girl." Elena scoffed from the driver's seat. $8,000 prenatal injections? There is literally no such medication in modern pharmacology. Wait, she just switched threads. Marcus continued scrolling. Now she's texting Richard. "Richie, I found a lovely preschool for our future son, but they require a $20,000 deposit to hold the slot. Ethan is being so annoying, trying to cook for me like a puppy. I only love you, baby. Wire the funds to the offshore account we set up." I watched Ethan walk around the counter, set the bowl of soup in front of Chloe, lean down, and gently press a kiss to the crown of her head. Chloe smiled up at him, patted his cheek, and immediately hit her phone screen against her thigh as she took a delicate sip of the broth. "Ethan really thinks he won the lottery," I said, unbuckling my seatbelt. "He thinks he's the hero of a tragic romance. Let's see how long his cape stays on," Victoria said, opening her door into the freezing downpour. We didn't knock. Marcus had the master override code for the electronic front gate and the smart lock on the cedar double doors, because he had paid the lease deposit using his corporate credit card 3 weeks ago when he was still trying to track Chloe's financial embezzlement. The heavy oak doors swung open with a soft mechanical click. The warm, cedar-scented air of the foyer hit us first, carrying the aroma of fresh rosemary and simmered chicken. Ethan snapped his head up from the stove, a sharp frown creasing his brow. "Who's there?" I told the property manager we didn't want any housekeeping. Until the words withered in his throat. I stepped through the entryway first, my rain-soaked boots leaving dark, wet prints across the polished white travertine tiles. Behind me walked Victoria, holding a leather litigation binder. Then came Elena, her surgeon's badge clicking against her chest. Then Rachel, holding a certified asset freeze order. And finally Marcus, stepping out of the shadows, towering and silent. Chloe's porcelain soup mug slipped from her fingers. It hit the quartz countertop, shattered into 3 pieces, and sent hot broth cascading across her designer cardigan and onto the floor. "See, Clara?" Ethan stammered, dropping his wooden spoon into the pot. His eyes darted from me to Victoria, then to Elena, and finally to Marcus. What is this? How did you find this place?" Chloe scrambled up from the bar stool, her face draining of every drop of color, retreating behind Ethan's back. "Ethan, call the police." Chloe shrieked, clutching Ethan's arm, her voice trembling in practiced, high-pitched terror. "She brought a gang. She wants to hurt our baby. She's crazy." Ethan's protective instincts flared up instantly. He shoved Chloe behind him, squared his shoulders, and glared at me with pure, unadulterated venom. "Clara Miller," Ethan roared, pointing a finger at my face. "Have you lost your damn mind? Chasing us all the way out here with a mob? I told you I'm divorcing you. I don't love you. If you lay a single finger on Chloe or my unborn child, I will make sure you rot in prison." I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I simply pulled a sleek wireless projector from my bag, set it on the dining table, and turned it on. The white living room wall lit up with a brilliant, high-definition glare. "Your unborn child, Ethan?" I asked softly, my voice echoing off the glass walls. "Which one? The one she promised to Steven, the one she promised to Jason, or the one she's currently selling to Richard Hayes for $20,000 on PayPal?" The living room fell into a silence so dense that the only sound was the rain hammering against the floor-to-ceiling glass. Ethan blinked, his brow furrowing in confusion. What are you talking about?" On the wall, the first slide appeared. It was a split screen displaying 4 high-resolution ultrasound scans, placed side by side. Beneath them were 4 different names. Patient, Chloe Bennett Miller, estimated due date, November 14th. Patient, Chloe Bennett Vance, estimated due date, November 14th. Patient, Chloe Bennett Rossi, estimated due date, November 14th. Patient, Chloe Bennett Hayes, estimated due date, November 14th. All 4 images showed the exact same gestational sac, the exact same 11mm embryo, and the exact same serial number. GE Volusone 8SN884920. This scan was performed at the Coral Gables Fertility Institute on August 14th. 2 years ago, Elena spoke up, her voice cutting through the room with surgical precision. The patient on the original file was a 34-year-old woman named Miranda Torres, who gave birth to healthy twins 18 months ago. Chloe bought the digital raw image file from an illicit dark web medical forum for $40. Ethan stared at the projection, his mouth slightly open. No, that's impossible. Chloe had morning sickness. She threw up yesterday morning. I held her hair. Ipecac syrup, Marcus said, stepping forward, tossing a small amber pharmaceutical bottle onto the quartz counter. 2 drops in her morning tea. Induces mild gastric irritation and nausea within 15 minutes. She's used it since our 2nd year of marriage whenever she needed to convince me she was too frail to sign tax returns. Chloe's breath hitched. She backed away toward the hallway stairs, her hands shaking violently. Ethan, don't listen to them. They forged those documents. Marcus is abusive. He's been stalking me for months because I left him for you. Is that so? Victoria stepped forward, opening her binder. She tapped the remote control, and the projector switched to a live mirror of Chloe's smartphone screen, which Marcus's forensic software was currently broadcasting in real time. The chat logs with Stephen Vance popped up in 6-foot-tall letters on the wall. Chloe, 11:42 a.m. Babe. The doctor says the baby needs specialized prenatal injections that cost $8,000. Can you wire it to my PayPal? Before noon? Stephen, 11:44 a.m. Transferred, my love. Anything for our little girl. When are you leaving that broke idiot Ethan? Chloe, 11:45 a.m. Soon, babe. He's just my free driver and cook for the weekend. The moment his cash runs out, I'm coming home to you. Ethan's eyes scanned the text. Once, twice, 3 times. His chest began to heave. The skin around his eyes turned a mottled, sickly gray. Driver? Ethan whispered, his voice cracking, looking back at Chloe over his shoulder. Cook. What is this, Chloe? Ethan, it's a hack. Chloe screamed, tears finally spilling over her mascara, her angelic voice turning shrill and ragged. Marcus works in software. Generated those fake messages with AI. You know how much I love you. I gave up my 20s for you. Did you give up your 20s for him when you were in Maui with my husband 3 months ago? Rachel Hayes asked, stepping forward, throwing a stack of high-gloss color photographs onto the kitchen island. The photos scattered across the counter. They showed Chloe on the deck of a private yacht in Hawaii, wearing a designer bikini wrapped around the shoulders of Richard Hayes, a silver-haired man in his 50s, holding a glass of Dom Perignon, laughing with her head thrown back. The date stamped on the corner of the photos was July 22nd. Ethan froze. July 22nd. I remembered July 22nd vividly. That was the day Arthur Miller had his first chemotherapy round. Ethan had told me he was too emotionally devastated to go to the hospital, locking himself in his bedroom, crying over a shoebox of Chloe's old college letters. While I was holding his father's vomit basin in the oncology ward, Chloe was on a yacht in Maui with another woman's husband. You told me. Ethan rasped, his voice dropping into a register of sheer, unadulterated horror. You told me you were in a private sanatorium in Switzerland on July 22nd, recovering from the emotional trauma of our lost child. Chloe didn't answer. She looked at the photos, looked at the 5 of us, and realized the room had no exits. The sweet, delicate, fragile girl Ethan had worshipped for a decade evaporated like mist. Her spine straightened, her face hardened into a mask of pure, vicious venom, and she let out a cold, sharp laugh that echoed off the high rafters. So what if I was? Chloe sneered, crossing her arms, looking at Ethan with utter, unvarnished disgust. Did you really think I came back for you, Ethan? Look at yourself. You're 33 years old, your father is a bankrupt invalid, you don't own a single asset that Clara didn't pay for, and you couldn't even give me more than 30 grand without stealing it from your joint checking account. Ethan took a step back, his hand hitting the stove, knocking the hot pot of soup over. The liquid splattered across his shoes and the floor, steaming in the cold draft, but he didn't even flinch. You told me I was the only man you ever loved. Ethan choked out tears of absolute humiliation welling in his eyes. You said you came back to give me a family. I came back because you were the easiest mark in the state. Chloe spat, wiping the fake tears from her face with the back of her hand. You felt so guilty. About that stupid miscarriage from college that you would have jumped off a bridge if I told you the water was warm. You were supposed to be my safety net while I finalized the divorce settlement with Marcus. But you're useless. You can't even get your pathetic wife to sign over her house. The sound of Ethan's soul shattering was almost audible in the quiet room. He stood in the middle of the kitchen, his apron covered in chicken broth, his hands trembling violently at his sides. He looked at Chloe, the woman he had put on a pedestal, the woman he had used to belittle me for 10 years, the woman for whom he had mocked my voice, my clothes, and my exhaustion. She was looking back at him as if he were a cockroach that had outlived its usefulness. Before Ethan could speak, my phone began to ring. It was the speakerphone from St. Jude's Hospital. I tapped the green button, letting the doctor's solemn voice fill the high-ceilinged room. Mrs. Miller? This is Dr. Aris from the intensive care unit. I am calling to inform you that Arthur Miller passed away 15 minutes ago. His heart ceased beating at 11:42 a.m. We attempted resuscitation for 20 minutes, but there was no response. Ethan's breath hitched. He grabbed his hair with both hands, his knees buckling, until he slammed against the lower kitchen cabinets. Dad. Ethan gasped, his voice breaking into a ragged, breathless wail. No, Dad. Dr. Aris, I said into the phone, my voice completely devoid of emotion. Thank you for the notification. Please release the body to the county morgue. Ethan Miller is the sole legal next of kin. His phone is currently active, and you may forward all outstanding medical invoices, totaling $92,000, directly to his personal email. Wait, Clara. Ethan scrambled forward on his knees across the wet floor, reaching out to grasp the hem of my jeans. Clara, please. My dad is dead. You loved him. You took care of him. You can't leave me with 90 grand in debt. We have to pay for the funeral. I looked down at him, stepping back so his fingers caught only empty air. Your father died while you were simmering organic broth for a woman who was texting her sugar daddy from your kitchen island, I said, looking down at his bowed head. I paid for your mother's funeral. I paid for his 3 years of chemotherapy. I paid for your rent, your car notes, your groceries, and your family's dignity. I pulled a thick blue folder from my bag and dropped it onto his back. The legal papers fluttered around him like heavy, white autumn leaves. That is a petition for absolute divorce on the grounds of adultery, financial fraud, and constructive abandonment. I continued, my voice ringing clear and hard through the room. I have filed an emergency ex parte motion freezing all accounts containing marital funds. The $30,000 you transferred to Chloe has been flagged by the district attorney's economic crimes unit as fraudulent conveyance. Clara. Ethan wept, clawing at the floorboards, pressing his forehead against the cold tiles. I was wrong. I was blind. She tricked me. Clara, we've been together for 10 years. Look at everything we built. I'll go to Dad's funeral on my knees. I'll apologize to your parents. Just don't divorce me. Please, God. Don't leave me. You didn't build anything, Ethan, I said, stepping around him toward the door. I built this life. You just lived in it. Right then, Ethan's phone on the counter began buzzing frantically. It was the Miller family WhatsApp group. With his hands shaking, Ethan reached up and tapped the speakerphone, hoping against hope that his relatives were calling to offer support. Instead, Aunt Sarah's screeching voice blasted through the room. Ethan, what the hell is going on? The pharmacy just declined your credit card for my diabetes medication. And Clara texted the group saying she canceled the family health insurance policy. Who is going to pay for my grandson's college tuition? You promised you'd take care of us. If you don't send $5,000 by tonight, don't you dare show your face at your father's wake. Liam's voice followed immediately. Bro, the landlord for my apartment just told me the rent check bounced. He says Clara revoked the autopay authorization. Are you crazy? My wife is pregnant. You need to fix this right now. The leeches he had spent 10 years feeding with my blood were now turning their teeth directly onto him. Ethan stared at the glowing phone screen, listening to his family rip him to shreds, realizing with terrifying absolute finality that without my money he was nothing more than an empty shell in a burning house. All right, Victoria said, stepping past Ethan's weeping form and looking directly at Chloe. Now that the domestic drama is settled, let's talk about federal wire fraud. Chloe's eyes narrowed, her back hitting the wooden banister of the stairs. You have nothing on me. Extramarital gifts are legal under state civil code. You can't sue me for receiving gifts from men who wanted to sleep with me. Gifts? Victoria laughed, a terrifying musical sound. She pulled out a second set of documents, stamped with the seal of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Division. Under Title 18 United States Code, Section 1343, obtaining money, property, or valuable assets through false pretenses across state lines using telecommunications infrastructure constitutes federal wire fraud, Victoria. Cited smoothly. Over the past 24 months, you used forged medical documents from a Miami clinic to solicit over $680,000 from 4 separate married men across 3 different states. Elena stepped forward, pulling her hospital ID badge from her pocket. And as a licensed physician, I have already submitted a formal complaint to the state medical board and the county prosecutor's office regarding the fabrication of digital patient records bearing a forged signature from Dr. Robert Hayes, who happens to be my departmental supervisor. Rachel Hayes added, smiling with cold satisfaction. And my divorce attorney just filed a joint civil RICO suit naming you as a co-conspirator in the illegal dissipation of marital corporate equity. Every single asset registered under your name, including that Porsche Cayenne, your luxury boutique in the Arts District, and your personal bank accounts in Delaware, was frozen by a federal judge 30 minutes ago. Chloe's jaw dropped. Frozen? She whispered, her voice finally breaking into pure, unadulterated panic. My boutique. You have $0, Chloe, Marcus said, stepping in front of her, looking down with cold, dead eyes. Your credit cards are dead. Your lease on the downtown apartment has been terminated for fraudulent application. And the police are currently waiting at the bottom of this driveway. The flashing red and blue lights of 3 state trooper vehicles illuminated the frosted glass of the living room windows, painting the walls in bloody shades of crimson and cobalt. Chloe looked around the room. To her left stood Victoria, holding the wire fraud evidence. To her right stood Elena, holding the forged medical transcripts. In front of her stood Rachel, holding the civil asset freeze. Beside her stood Marcus, the legal husband who had systematically dismantled her offshore accounts. And on the floor, weeping in a puddle of cold chicken soup, was Ethan, the man she had used as her disposable shield, now broken, ruined, and bankrupt. Chloe let out a blood-curdling scream of pure, cornered fury. She lunged forward, her acrylic nails aiming straight for my eyes. You bitch. You ruined my life. I was going to be rich. I was going to have everything. Before her fingers could reach me, Marcus caught her by both wrists, twisting them behind her back with mechanical efficiency, pinning her against the quartz counter just as 4 state troopers pushed through the front doors with their weapons drawn. Chloe Bennett, the lead trooper, announced, clicking the heavy steel handcuffs over her wrists. You are under arrest for grand larceny, multiple counts of wire fraud, forgery of medical records, and criminal extortion. You have the right to remain silent. As the officers dragged Chloe toward the door, she thrashed and kicked, screaming obscenities at the top of her lungs, her designer dress tearing against the doorframe, her perfect hair coming loose into a tangled, wild mess. Ethan, help me, she shrieked, looking back one last time. Ethan, you promised you'd protect me. Tell them I'm carrying your baby. Ethan. Ethan didn't move. He sat on the floor, his forehead resting against the cold tiles, his eyes wide and vacant, staring at the shattered pieces of the soup mug as the siren wails faded into the rainy night. The trial of Chloe Bennett became the most talked about financial scandal in the state's legal history, with 5 betrayed spouses providing synchronized financial records, cloud chat, backups, and forensic medical testimony. The defense had nowhere to run. Within 3 months, Chloe took a plea deal, 8 years in the state women's correctional facility, followed by 5 years of strict probation, and a mandatory restitution order totaling $840,000 to be paid to the joint marital trusts of the victims. Her boutique was liquidated at public auction. Her Porsche was repossessed. Her jewelry was seized by the federal marshal. She went to prison with nothing to her name but a prison-issued gray jumpsuit and a pair of rubber shoes. As for the men, the retribution was swift, clinical, and total. Stephen Vance was forced out of his family logistics firm after Victoria filed for divorce, taking 70% of his liquid assets, the family estate, and primary custody of their children under a strict infidelity fault clause. He now lives in a rented studio apartment above a laundromat, working as a night shift freight dispatcher to pay his court-mandated alimony. Jason Rossi was stripped of his medical directorship at the hospital after Elena presented the board with proof of his financial embezzlement from their joint clinic accounts. He was demoted to an entry-level clinical consultant, his name a permanent punchline among the surgical residents. Richard Hayes faced a catastrophic corporate audit after Rachel's forensic team uncovered millions in undisclosed gifts. The board of directors removed him as CEO of Hayes Development, and Rachel walked away with the entirety of their Palm Beach real estate portfolio and a multi-million-dollar cash settlement. Marcus Vance sold the house he had once shared with Chloe, split the proceeds evenly into a trust fund for victims of domestic financial fraud, resigned from his tech firm, and relocated to Seattle to start a private cybersecurity consultancy. And Ethan Miller? Ethan became a ghost in his own life. Without my income, his father's estate went into probate default, and the bank foreclosed on the Miller family home to satisfy the $92,000 in outstanding medical liens. The Miller relatives, furious that their free ride had ended, completely turned their backs on him. Aunt Sarah told the entire neighborhood that Ethan was a cursed failure who had killed his own father with his selfishness. Liam moved his family to another state, blocking Ethan's number after Ethan couldn't pay his rent. Ethan lost his corporate job after the scandal leaked onto local business forums. He was forced to move into a tiny, rundown room in an unheated boarding house near the industrial train tracks, working 12-hour shifts as an inventory clerk at an Amazon distribution center. 1 year later, the summer sun blazed in a clear, sapphire blue sky over the downtown commercial district. The air smelled of roasted espresso, fresh pastries, and the clean breeze coming off the river. I stood on the second-floor terrace of my newly opened studio headquarters, Clara Miller Media and Productions. My TikTok channel had grown from a modest late-night side hustle into a full-scale culinary and lifestyle network with over 3 million subscribers. My new cookbook had hit the regional bestseller list 3 weeks ago, and my production team was currently setting up the lighting for our first syndicated live cooking broadcast. I was wearing a tailored emerald green silk blouse, cream linen trousers, and a pair of delicate diamond earrings I had bought myself with my first commercial royalty check. My hair fell in glossy, polished waves around my shoulders. My skin was glowing, and the dark, bruised circles of exhaustion that had haunted my 20s were completely gone. Beside me on the terrace sat Victoria, Elena, and Rachel, sipping iced mimosas under the shade of a striped canvas umbrella. The final audit on Chloe's restitution fund cleared this morning, Victoria said, raising her champagne flute with a brilliant, triumphant smile. The first quarterly disbursement of $32,000 was wired into your corporate account 30 minutes ago, Clara. Elena clinked her glass against Victoria's. And Jason's second quarter alimony payment just cleared my investment portfolio. I used it to fund a new pediatric scholarship endowment in my own maiden name. Rachel laughed, looking radiant in a white sundress, adjusting her sunglasses. I just closed on a seaside cottage in Martha's Vineyard. You 3 are staying with me for the entire month of August, and I'm not taking no for an answer. We raised our glasses together, the crystal ringing with a clear, musical ping. That sounded like absolute freedom. To the wives, I smiled. To the women who survived, they answered in unison. As we lowered our glasses, my production assistant, Maya, stepped out onto the terrace. Ms. Miller, Maya said, looking down toward the street below with a slight frown. There's a man standing near the entrance gate. He's been out there for 2 hours in the sun. He says he needs to speak with you for 5 minutes. I walked over to the wrought iron railing and looked down. Standing on the hot asphalt of the sidewalk was Ethan. He was unrecognizable. He was wearing a faded, sweat-stained flannel shirt, worn-out sneakers with holes near the toes, and a faded ball cap pulled low over his forehead. His face was gaunt, his skin burned red by the sun, his eyes sunken and bloodshot. He was clutching a battered cardboard box containing a few old kitchen spices and a framed photograph of his late father. When he looked up and saw me standing on the sunlit terrace, dressed in silk, radiant, surrounded by successful women, looking down at him from the height of an empire he had never contributed to, his breath caught in his throat. He took 2 staggering steps forward, reaching his trembling, calloused hands toward the iron gate. Clara. His voice drifted up, cracked, hoarse, carrying the desperate, pathetic weight of a man drowning in his own regrets. Clara, please. It's Dad's 1-year memorial tomorrow. I just wanted to give you his Old Spice grinder. The one you always liked. He choked on a sob, his knees trembling on the pavement. I have nothing left, Clara. I work 90 hours a week and I still can't afford the heat in the winter. I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. Please, just let me come up. Let me make it up to you for the rest of my life. I looked down at the man who had wasted 10 years of my youth. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hatred. I didn't even feel the satisfaction of revenge. I felt only the cold, vast, beautiful indifference of a woman looking at a stranger whose name had long since ceased to matter. I took a slow sip of my iced mimosa, the cold champagne sweet against my tongue. Maya, I said calmly, turning my back on the railing. Yes, Ms. Miller? Tell security to water the hydrangeas near the gate, I said, walking back toward the shaded table where my friends were waiting with laughing eyes and full glasses. The pavement out there looks a bit dusty today. Right away, Ms. Miller. I sat back down in the soft cushions, the summer breeze catching the hem of my silk blouse, and lifted my glass once more into the warm, endless sunlight.